Hello, gang. Professor McElroy here. It's 6:30, so we're going to go ahead and start our lecture here for advertising design. We're into learning module 3. Really good job so far, kind of sticking with the content, sticking with working on things one piece at a time, posting in your discussion board and keeping the conversation going. With the hurricane, we've been in, challenging times this session, but we're going to get through it. So just hang in there. Know that the university is going to extend our time and we're going to have some more time to work on projects and that sort of thing. So just hang in there, keep working along, doing the best you can. And we're going to kind of learn Photoshop and learn some of our basic skills here. Learning module 1, week 1. The lecture was all about just basic Photoshop techniques, right? Just selection tools, understanding what pixels are, understanding the toolbar in Photoshop, getting an idea what layers are and how they work, and just getting comfortable with the basics of Photoshop. Some of you in this cohort have used Photoshop before. Others are kind of newer to it. Some hadn't seen it before. And so week 1, learning module 1 was just about the basics. I think your book does an excellent job of teaching you some really cool professional techniques, spoon feeding you in baby steps. I think the book is pretty easy, quotation marks, to navigate through. The pictures are beautiful. The step-by-step, I think, is on point. Over all the years we've been teaching ad design class, and we've been teaching it using this book for a few years now. I think it's one of our better real world applicable book processes. So really good job so far with that, navigating through some of the projects. We're going to keep plugging along. Week 2, the recording was posted because of the hurricane. I didn't have access to internet or power or anything. I posted my previous week 2 learning module 2 lecture, which was showing you things like basic masking techniques. We took the texture and we applied it to letters and kind of showed you layer styles and effects and kind of how you can navigate through that process using what I would consider like a couple of more like upper beginner, beginning, intermediate kind of processes. I posted a pre-lecture for learning module 3, which hopefully you've gotten a chance to take a peek at. But I really want to spend learning module 3 just showing you some of the ways I use imagery to produce professional level outputs. So ads and billboard designs and anything that is raster based. Maybe it's a magazine cover that I insert into an InDesign multi-page file. Anytime I'm blending images together, creating kind of this super surreal or really perfect looking image collages that I then layer text on top of, or I import logos or illustrations on top of, knowing that Adobe CC is built in a way that all of the programs play really well together. So if I'm doing a magazine cover and I'm blending all the images together for the cover, I may import the logo, that's an Illustrator file, EPS file, some scalable vector graphic. I may import it in as a smart object into Photoshop, so it's scalable and it's crisp and it's clean, and I can continue my layer document in Photoshop. And in my pre-lecture, I showed bringing in smart objects and things like that. So really, I just want to reinforce and go over some of those more professional techniques I've used over the years, keeping in mind that I'm going on my almost 25th year of using the Adobe applications professionally. So over the years, I've evolved techniques. I've done things a little bit differently based on kind of how the software has evolved, and also kind of my technique, my tricks, kind of the things I do, the style that I create. But keep in mind that every student kind of has their own attractors, their own aspects of the software application that might really appeal to them, that they may end up building their own kind of unique style based on. Knowing that designers have a place in every industry. Every industry uses them. Every industry has a position for them, but every industry is different. How they brand, their look, their feel, kind of what the output looks like that best connects to their audience. So really, as an instructor, as someone who uses but is also teaching software application techniques, know that you're going to kind of evolve your style and techniques based on kind of what inspires you, what you see on a day-to-day basis, and kind of what you end up feeling most comfortable with in the applications as we kind of push forward. So your out-of-book projects are all going to look different. They're all going to look different because everyone kind of has their own unique style of how they do things, kind of how they process color and texture and scale and proportion and hierarchy and all those things, kind of those visual elements of background, middle ground, and foreground, and how they blend together to tell a story. So I'll show you some kind of tricks and things I do as I build and design and evolve, but no, there's kind of lots of different ways, and it kind of is based on your visual eye, kind of how you use the tools, techniques. But remember, the end product, we're looking for a professional output. So we're looking for high resolution imagery in Photoshop. We're looking for clean curved lines in Illustrator. We're looking for something that's built in a visual hierarchy way in InDesign, where there's, you know, visual separation between like an H1 header, bigger text, and like body copy, and kind of how we play with color and scale and proportion and bold and italic and different types of type treatment in textual layout, so that we produce a finished product that communicates the message effectively. So just know, as we're evolving through software applications, that's our end goal: produce a professional product. And the more you can search the internet, the more you can look at your surroundings, the more that you can look at, absorb, process, kind of review what you see in a day-to-day basis, really truly will inspire you visually as a visual communicator. So if you're in the food store, you're at a store, maybe you're on a website, or you're playing a video game, whatever those kind of exterior kind of influencers are in your life, they're all going to shape how you visually see things, how you process things, and how you design. So with that being said, we're going to go around and play in Photoshop a little bit, so I can show you kind of some of the things I do, how I do them, why I do them, and kind of the process of things. So let's go out. We're going to go out to, let's go out to Pexels. You know, I love to go out there and grab high resolution images. So let's do mountain trail. I think I want to do kind of a hiking scene or something. I've been doing kind of these fall outdoorsy scenes lately. It's kind of what inspires me. So let's see what I can find here that has kind of trail written all over it. This is a nice one. So let's get in here and download this image. So I'm going to grab this. I'm going to grab a hiker, and then maybe I'll come back in and grab some other elements as I evolve my picture. So we got that trail. That's going to be my background. So that's what I'm going to build upon. And then first thing I'm going to do is grab hiker. I'm going to grab a hiker image that we can cut out and kind of use as our kind of trail walking person. Now, when you're building background, middle ground, foreground type things, you want to make sure that you're grabbing elements that will fit in your scene, that are easier, I would consider easier to cut out, have a separation between background and foreground, that are elements that we can really kind of use and work with. So let's see here. Let's grab this dude. He's kind of on the mountains here. Probably be an easier kind of cutout opportunity for us. And we'll just start with those two elements. And we're going to bring this trail image into Photoshop. And this is what we're going to start with. So let's open this up. And then the first thing we really want to do, recognize, know. So let's I'm just going to shrink this down a little bit so I can make sure I'm working inside of my window so that you can truly see what's going on. So I'm going to expand this out, and I'm going to shrink this in a little bit just to make sure that I have it away from my zoom window. You'll notice we're at 6.25%. So look how big this thing is. I mean, I can really zoom in and get some really nice detail out of this image. So if I go up to image size, it's 64 inches, right? So if we resample this thing down to 300 resolution, it'll be 15 inches wide. I want to deal in high resolution. So I want to make sure if this was a magazine cover, I was making an advertisement. I don't want to be in 72. I want to be in 300. Pexels is great because it gives you super high resolution. So if I bump it up to 300 DPI, which is finished print quality output, it resamples my image down to 15 inches, knowing that 15 inches wide is perfectly fine for magazine layout and different things that I'm working on. Could I get away with 203 DPI, roughly in that range? I probably could. The scalability up from 203 to 300 still would give me a relatively crisp image, but you want to make sure that you're working in 300 DPI. You want to make sure you're working in extremely high resolution. Okay, so we have our image kind of sampled up to 300. We're going to go ahead and release the background from this, and I'm going to call this background. So let's do mountain trail underscore BG, which means background. And you'll notice now that it has transparency under it, so it's not locked. That's a really important step in the building layering process in case I want to bring in elements underneath of it, if I want to blend any elements in, no matter what my background image is, I always release it from lock or release it from background so that if I end up introducing, let's say, a dark color. So watch if I put this layer and we're just going to do black field, black background. And I'm going to do select all. And I'm going to fill this thing in with black, right? I'm going to fill this thing in with black. And I'm going to go ahead and lock that because that's my black field area, my black background. The reason I do black versus white maybe is that it allows me to kind of bump up the contrast, enhance the contrast of a particular element or image. And so the first thing I'm going to show you is the power of layering effects, and blending them together. Even though this is an absolutely beautiful scene, right? It's a beautiful scene. I could import just a sky image and blend that in. So if I went into, let's go into Pexels, and just for the sake of the process, let's do sunset. And let's see if I can find just a beautiful sunset image. So let's take this one, just so you can kind of see what could happen. Right? I'm trying to make this surreal environment that I'm working in. So I'm going to minimize that. I'm going to bring in this background. I'm going to select all. So which is Command A, and then Command C, which is copy. And then I'm going to bring it in, and I'm going to do Command V. And you're going to notice this image comes in, and it isn't as large as my mountain scene. So watch if I just transform this, hold down Option, scale it proportionately. So I'm just going to scale it just up a skosh. I'm going to drop that in there. I'm going to hit Enter or Return just to add to my transform. And now let's zoom into 100%, and let's just see what the final output of that scaling is. And I'm holding down my space bar to pan. See how this becomes pixelated? See how it gets really blurry? But if I scroll down to 100% my image, the original background image, look how nice it is. Like it's crisp. So this image isn't going to work because I'm stretching or expanding up an image that doesn't fit the resolution of what I'm looking for. So I need a vertical sky that's, oh, look at this sky. So let's see what we have going on here. So let's try this one. I'm going to download it just to see what this sky looks like. So I'm going to drag that over, see what the resolution is, see what the quality is. I'm going to drag this over, select all, copy, and I'm going to bring it into this image, paste. And it's a little bit better, but it's not great, right? So watch what happens if I scale this up. Hit Enter, zoom into 100%. Pan down. Still choppy, still blurry, but not as bad. I'm actually going to use this because I'm going to do an image blend. And when I blend it and add in a multiply or a blending effect to it, it's going to allow me to blend this sky in a little bit. So let's just see what it looks like. So see if I go to multiply and I can see kind of the image underneath. So you see how I can just play with all of these overlays like soft light. So you can actually see the mountain scene there, like where it is. I'm going to go in and use my eraser tool and see how I have it set to a soft brush with a hardness of only 11%. That allows us to do what's called a feather bleed. So watch when I erase the image. So I'm going to erase the image because I don't want the mountains and everything, but I want the original. So you see how I blended that in. So I have the original sky, and see how I can play around with all these blending modes. Look at all the different techniques you can do to bring that image in. But I'm just going to go up to normal because the sky is really beautiful as it is. So here's my normal. So I've just imported a little bit of sky to adjust this just a little bit. I also could go in and use my magic wand tool and select. So let's just change the tolerance to like 20% and see. Nope. Oh, it was 200%. Let's see if we can grab just the sky above the mountains. So I'm just using the background, my mountain trail layer. And I can switch to here now and hold down shift and add to my selection. And now I have the mountains pretty much selected. I'm going to go in now and I'm going to save my selection. Oh. And I'm going to name this sky. So now I have that saved as a selection area inside of my document. So I can always load this sky selection if I want to do anything with my image. So let's say I wanted to go in here and add a new layer, and I'm going to sample. Let's do, so I'm going to double click on my foreground and I'm going to sample one of these like beautiful colors from the sky. Let's grab that one. And I'm going to go in now and move. This is my cloud underscore sunset. And then this one is going to be my color bleed. I'm just going to call it color bleed because I'm going to bring this color in now. So I'm going to use my load selection, grab my sky, but I have it selected on my color bleed. And I'm going to do edit fill. I'm going to fill it with my foreground color. And so now you can see that. And I'm actually going to deselect it because now I'm going to go in and use one of my settings like light dodge. And so now look what it did. It blended in the clouds. See that? Started to blend in the color of the clouds with the cloud selection I chose. And now I'm going to use my eraser tool and I'm going to blend it off the mountain edge so that I don't get that hard edge. So now you have that color bleed combined with the cloud sunset. And now you can see I'm starting to make this surreal mountain sky created in my document. So now I'm starting to create new layers for my background that enhance the layers I already have. And so I start my background layer and then I enhance from there. So let's take a look at what it looks like if I duplicate my mountain trail layer. So you see how it's a duplicate copy. Now watch if I go in and I use one of my enhancers, like you see the overlay, see how rich it makes the trail. So watch now. So we're going to call this mountain trail. Instead of BG, we're going to call it overlay because that's the technique I used in my layers. And I'm going to use my eraser tool and I'm going to make the mountains back here the original image color, but I'm going to leave the grass and the trails. So look what it looks like. So now just the trails are super saturated. So you can see it, they're super saturated, which adds a really cool effect. So now watch what I do if I duplicate this again, and I'm gonna do mountain trail darken. And so I'm just, all of these layers are just background layers. And the reason I'm choosing darken is because watch what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna choose dark, and let's see if we can add a overlay to this thing. So I'm going to scroll down and just see what the different techniques are for the different shades. So let's do hard light. So you see how hard light darkens the mountains? So now I'm going to take my eraser tool and I'm going to lighten the sky back up. So there's the sky lighten back up. And I'm going to lighten the trail back up. But I'm going to keep the canyon where the trail disappears dark. So you see that? See how it's only dark on the edges now? So I'm using these kind of feathering techniques to layer. So let's turn all these layers off. And we're going to turn them back on one at a time. Keeping in mind, this is all background layers. So you see how that starts with my background, darkens the canyon, lightens the trail, highlights the sky, and adds a sunset of clouds. So look at the difference, the background layer. This is all what I would consider BG layers or background layers. And we can't forget that we have the black field underneath our document. So look at what happens if I go in now with the background. So I'm going to scroll over and start at the beginning. Maybe luminosity. So see what it does to the background before the sky. Scroll, scroll, scroll. Is there anything that maybe adds to the black in the background that may enhance what we have going on? Sometimes lighten works just to soften it a little bit. All right, I like that. All right, so I'm going to go in now and save it. Remember, don't work too long. Save the computer. And I'm going to call it Rome ad because we're just kind of building a magazine advertisement. All right, so now I have the layers. Remember, layers are really important. So you have to save your Photoshop file so that we have access to all the layers. Keeping in mind that once we do that, we don't need the background. The only thing we need left, because we haven't added them yet, is the hiker. So we could get rid of this JPEG. We could get rid of the sky. Nothing is linked, right? Everything is embedded in our Photoshop document. And once I import the hiker in, then I don't have anything to worry about with the hiker either. So we're just building kind of our layers, our elements, one element at a time. I hope this is making sense to you because everyone has a slightly different visual style. I like to do like super saturation, kind of super color absorbing image elements so that it feels like it's the perfect noon, high noon daylight hour on the elements, and that the foreground stands out from the background and really gives us kind of a hypersensitivity to the light, like a pin light shining on the elements that I'm building. All right, so now we need to go in. So let's bring in our hiker. So I'm just going to select all and copy him, and then I'm going to paste him, and here he is. So now I got to move him up to the front because he's really kind of our foreground element. And so you see him right here, getting ready for his hike. And so I'm going to move him into the middle because what I want to show you is that I'm going to use a sampling technique called select and mask. So select and mask, and you're going to see. So let's crank him down. Let's crank up our radius, crank up our smooth a little bit. Let's get in and let's zoom in a little bit. and crank the transparency up just a skosh. And so here is our guy. And so let's change the size. And you can see just by dragging my pixels, I'm doing a little bit of a selection to the hiker. So if I color his pants, it'll select his pants. Let's make sure we have everything selected that we need to. See if we can grab his shoes. Grab his other shoes. Let's make sure feathering is set up a little bit just to give him a slight blend of the edges. So let's see what he looks like. So let's just see how he looks based on what I have going on here. So let's minimize. See if we can get the edge of his pants a little bit. And so I'm going to start with the basics here, just to get him kind of selected. Turn on the edge so you can see the edge of him. So we'll feather him just a skosh. We're going to feather him just a skosh. And now you can see that he's kind of selected. He's kind of selected, but he's missing a little bit. So I'm going to go in with my Shift key and the Option key for minus, and I'm going to go in and clean up my selection a little bit. Let's see what he has. The Option key is kind of removing, and the Shift key is kind of adding. So I'm just cleaning up what I have going on here. I'm going to zoom in just a little bit. Make sure I can grab his pants leg. And this is the part of the process that's a little bit meticulous because you want to make sure that you do a really good job of doing some basic selection. Now I put a feather on this, so there is a slight blending or blurring of the hiker, but I'm going in just to clean up his edges a little bit. I want to get a decent cutout of his jeans. I actually want to change this tolerance ever so slightly. So let's see if we can get a little bit more of his legs in one swoop. So we're just gonna, so let's do Option, kind of remove this little part of the sky. You definitely want to make sure that you don't have any of that background. Oh, space bar to pan. Option to minus. And so the shoes are a little bit tricky because of the laces. So what I'm going to do is switch to here, hold down Option, and I'm just going to trace along the edge of his shoe. And then I'm going to hold down Shift. I'm going to trace along the edge of his shoe. So you kind of got to use a few different things. I don't need the shadow. So I'm going to use the lasso tool to kind of cut that out. These aren't going to be in the image, so it doesn't matter overly because I'm kind of not going to use his shoes just so he feels a little bit bigger than he is. Remember, I have feather selected, so the edge of this is going to blur in anyway. But let's get back and see if we can cut out. Oh, there we go. So I'm just bouncing through a couple of the selection tools to make sure that to see if I can get the strap. It's going to be feathered, so it doesn't have to be perfect because I am blending it in a little bit. But I want to make sure that I don't have any background in this process. So I'm going to use my lasso tool a little bit here. And I've bounced back and forth between a few of these tools because I've used them over and over again as a professional. But so let's go in. And I'm just using it to clean up my selection, right? I used the select object. And if I had chosen one on a little bit better background, and I'll kind of show you that once I get the mask set up here. And I'm just checking what I have selected and what I don't have selected. I don't have to be perfect with some of this stuff because I'm just showing you some different techniques for selecting. I do want this shoulder right here, so I want to make sure I get that and use my lasso tool. Remember, it's feathered, so that's why it's not snapping perfectly to the edge of this thing. And so let's give ourselves, I don't know, about a 6-point feather. So we have that feathered a little bit. And so I always like to save my selection just so I know what I have going on. And so there he is. Pretty good job cut out. He's got a slight feather. Let's make sure it's 6-point. So let's just make sure it's a layer mask. And so here he is. So now I can move him over. And he's cut out now, but the original background is still there if I ever needed it. And so now I've got my hiker here. So I got my first layer mask. So I'm going to name this Hiker Original. And so now I'm going to show you some of the layer mask duplication. So I'm going to add a new layer. And this one I'm going to do, there's so many different things you can do with we're going to add a slight lens flare to him as a duplicate. And I'm going to crank it down just so that you can see the highlight on him. And now I'm going to take a duplicate and this one. So I'm going to name this one Hiker Lens Flare. And I'm going to name this Hiker Highlight. But instead of doing an effect, I'm going to go in and maybe adjust so you can see that I added a blue tint to him. And now I'm just going to zoom in a little bit so we can see what we have going on with our hiker. I'm going to crank down my swatch here. And I'm going to make just his jeans and a little bit of his backpack blue. And I could duplicate this over and over again. So I could take the original, add a new, do image, adjust. Maybe we want to do a color balance. Make his sweatshirt blue. everything else the other color. So you can see it right there. And then I could do a lighten. And so now you can see his sweatshirt is a little bit blue. And I could start building this super surreal looking image for my advertisement. So we can trash that now. So let's go in and let's grab one more image. So yeah. Let's go in and grab one more image. And let's do like, let's go back to hiker and see if there's a different kind of perspective of the hiker that we might want to use. Like he's hiking with more than one person. So let's grab this dude. Maybe he's got his buddy here. He's hiking with his buddy. So let's drop that. And I'm just going to close this because I don't really need it anymore after that. Let's dump this guy. Zoom in and see what we have going on with him. Let's do select all, copy. So I'm going to take this, and now that I did what I want to do, I'm going to hold down shift and select all those layers, and I'm going to do what's called merge visible. So merge visible will actually, oh, selected too many of them. So we'll merge those. And now we have our hiker all as one dude. And now we can paste in our new guy, which is this guy right here. Let's flip this guy. Let's see what we have going on here. Here's our guy. Let's flip our dude. So here he is. Maybe he's hiking with this guy. I mean, in theory, he might be able to be standing on a rock. So let's go to our thing. Let's do select subject. So here he is. So let's make sure. So let's add to our selection his brim of his hat. So he's looking pretty good. We don't really need the rock, but the problem with that is that, I mean, I guess in theory, he could be standing on a rock. And so now so let's make this size a little bit smaller now. Crank it down. See if we can. So let's do. Let's do our layer mask. So there he is. Now, just for the sake of the process, let's get into our layer mask. So here he is. Zoom in here a little bit. Let's click OK. And so now, let's get in here. Make sure that's okay. Clean that up a little bit. And so let's now. Let's take this guy and let's go in And he's okay. He's okay right now. So here he is. I'm going to move this guy down. I do see, though, that his hat has a little, a little something going on. So we need to, let's crank this up a little bit. Get rid of that. Get rid of that. And I'm using the space bar, kind of pan down a little bit, just to make sure. Oh, he has a hand. I think he has a hand, right? I have to see what it is. Oh, he doesn't have a hand. I can use that just to wipe that out. I'm just trying to figure out what we have here. Zoom out. There we go. So let's go in here now and duplicate, image adjust, brightness contrast. And then we're going to take our eraser tool. I'm going to darken the backpack back down. I'm going to darken his face and hat back down. I'm going to darken the edge of his arm there so that you don't see that he doesn't have a hand. How our hiker dudes are going. And so now I saved a version of the logo, so I'm just going to open that up just to show you what's going on. So let's select all and copy that. Paste it. So you're going to notice this was low resolution. So the logo, I'm going to lock these other layers just so that you can see. Here's the logo. Let's zoom. It is not a smart object, right? It's super, super small. So watch what happens if I scale it up. See how blurry it is? So ideally, I would have a copy of this logo in a vector form that I could bring in as an EPS file, a smart object, copy it out of Illustrator. But just for the sake of the process, I don't know if you've ever seen that you can very easily black out or white out a logo in Photoshop. So I'm going to make it white. So then you won't notice the guy doesn't have a hand because I'm putting his logo over the top of it. But once you create these layer styles, you can import elements and stagger them in between. So let's say Rome had like a color swatch. So let's go in here, add a new layer and call it color stripe. So let me open up this again because I'm going to sample this color. There it is. So now I can go over here and on my color swipe, I could do this. And so there is that color, and then you can do all kinds of stuff. So if I wanted to play around with making the image saturated with the shade of that color. So you see how I could bring that in as like a hue. There it is to call out the logo. If I wanted to, I could go in, because remember, I've been using these blending techniques. The repetition of color is really powerful. I could blend this in. So you see how the swipe is just behind the logo? What if I brought it forward? Now you can see it's technically in front of that hiker, even though, so let's bring it further, even further forward. Now you can see it in front of this guy, but look at the technique. So it blends into the backpack. And then I could do things like add a shadow to the logo. So I'm going to crank it up. And then you can just see how dramatic you can make this thing. And these are just layer techniques, right? So look at the logo now, even though it's not the best quality, if I had an Illustrator, an EPS file of it that I could copy and paste in as a smart object, it would work a little bit better. I mean, this could be traced in Illustrator and brought in if you took digital illustration class, but I'm just trying to get kind of the basics of this layering technique to show you how you can create this surreal environment by creating masks, layering those masks, adding image adjustment, filter effects, all these different treatments to your image. So in theory, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 layers to make an image that no one would have even known that the mountain and everything wasn't its own image. Yeah, maybe you could know the hiker wasn't in that image, but if I remove, so let's keep this guy and let's remove this guy. And let's take our logo and our color stripe, take these two things. Actually, I could just take the logo, honestly, and move just the logo over and keep that hiker, but I need to move the hiker as a whole. So let's see what we have. Oh, he's locked. I'm just going to bump him over. So here he is. So I typically leave the background locked. So whatever I'm doing, I don't adjust the background because I already love the background just the way it is. So the color bleed, the color sky, and leave all the others. And once the logo is where I want it, I'll go ahead and lock it. And so now I have the beginning of this like really surreal image, this really surreal background, middle ground, and foreground. And I can build just by saturating over and over again. There's times I build ads, I build magazine covers, and the background image might be 20 copies of the same image over and over again with different mask and filter effects and image adjustments, all to make just the background image. And then the middle ground might be, I don't know, a surfer or something. And that surfer could be made up of 20 layers, all masked, all with different treatments, textures, lighting effects, image adjustments, color balances, saturations, layer effects, all those things. So 20 background, 20 surfer, and then my foreground traditionally is textual elements, logos, that sort of thing. And I could adjust those. And then you get a combination of all of these different things. So now if I go in, so let's go in with a new window. And so I don't know what Rome Adventure, I think it's like code.com. Nope, So let's do Rome Adventure. RomeAdventureCo.com. And so I don't know, what is their tagline? Let's see if there's anything. Made to Rome, right? Made to Rome is their caption. So I'm going to use my text elements now and make sure that I'm there. I'm going to tap made. And remember, I still have the color sampled from the original logo. So we have made. I'm going to type that in and select that. Move that to there. Let's use our text tool. I'm going to get in here and hit enter and do 2, enter Rome. And then let's open up our character palette. And that way I can change my leading and my kerning. And so I need to adjust this. It's 200 points. So what's 72? Does that separate it enough? Nope. So let's do like 150. I don't like, so let's do this. I want to make made to all on one line so that this thing is a little more balanced. So here it is. And remember, we can do all kinds of things. So let's do this. Let's go in. I don't know. Well, let's see what kind of pixels. So let's just do sky again. I just want to do like some really beautiful sky. So let's drag that. Go ahead and close that again. Open this in Photoshop. Select all, copy. I can close that. Paste. Here it is. Now you'll notice it isn't the perfect size. This one probably isn't going to matter as much because it's going to be for the text. And so now I have that clipping mask inside of the letters. Remember, I can always shadow the letters. And so now I can do, and I like to do this too. The letters are that color. I remember they're the peachy color. So watch if I use my eraser brush. And erase the top and bottom of that image. So it's only clouds in the middle. And then I can do image, adjust. I don't know, what do I want to adjust? Maybe I want to adjust the exposure. So what if I boost it up? So now you can see it's like super contrasty. I can crank down the saturation a little bit. And now you can see it just becomes a texture inside the letters. And so now we have that. And then I can select these two things. Let's rasterize the type. So now it's just an image. It's not tied to a text. And now I just merged the clipping mask with the text. And now I can really do some great things. So now you can see. And just know that, I mean, there's just so many things you can do. So watch now if I duplicate this layer and the duplicated layer, I remove the drop shadow. but I add color overlay. And I'm going to make it white just so you can see what I'm doing. Now I'm going to take my eraser tool. I'm going to do that. And I'm going to do that. So you can see that highlight. So there it is. And then look at what happens as I play. Let's go in. I don't like that. So let's go in. Now you can see that. And then let's do image adjust, brightness contrast. Push that up just a skosh. Turn off the drop shadow. Now you can see it's highlighted. So let's make this even skinnier. So it's only in the middle of the layers. So you can see it right there. See that? And then let's do image adjust. Crank it up a little bit more. There it is. And then I like to do things like, let's blur it a little. Just a skosh, just to soften it a little bit. And the sky's the limit, right? If you know clipping mask, if you know objects select and mask, if you know image adjustments, if you know filter effects, if you know layer styles, which are what's in here. You can do all kinds of stuff, right? You can do all kinds of stuff, layer upon layer upon layer, and just really make it. So watch this. So let's do this. This is the original. Let's duplicate that. I drag this all the way to the top. So you can see it's like super saturated now, right? It's like super saturated. Double click on here, turn that off. Let's do a stroke. Really thin stroke. Let's do it on the outside. Normal. And now I'm going to cut this out of the middle. And try to make this look like kind of like a tear through the word Rome. Not as successful as I would have liked to have been. All right, so there you go. I'm going to go ahead and save this. Right, so the sky's the limit. I mean, take a look, and I'm going to turn each layer on just so you can see. Let's go ahead and trash this layer. That one didn't work so well. So let's turn all these off, and we're just going to turn them on one at a time so you can really get an idea for what the image started as and what we built it to be. Right, so it started as a black background. Then we imported our mountain scene. Then we darkened the valley. Then we enhanced the trail. Then we bled the background with some of that beautiful kind of magenta color. Then we added the clouds over the top of it. Then we imported our hiker. Then we enhanced our hiker's jacket. Then we put a color swipe so that we could enhance the logo on top of it, which has its own layer effects. And then we brought our text elements and created all those masks. And we highlighted the words. I mean, there's so many things you can do with just a few tools if you understand kind of the process for masking, selecting, removing objects, blending them on top of each other, layering in a visually hierarchy kind of sequential way, background, middle ground, foreground. You can create some really powerful solutions. So my lecture pre-recording and now this hour and 15-minute or so lecture should really help to kind of enhance your step-by-step from your book and some of those professional kind of cinematic processes and transfer those into a professional application. So I hope this lecture helped. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording and hopefully I'm going to post this in the announcement. So please watch this as you're working on your assignments. Have a great week, everyone.